One of the biggest mistakes people make after leaving a narcissist is believing that no contact is the final blow. It is not. There is something that hits much harder, and most survivors do not even realize it because they are so focused on staying away. By the end of this, you will clearly understand the one thing that makes a narcissist feel truly powerless. Not because you attacked them, not because you got revenge, but because you removed the one advantage they always counted on. If you have ever wondered why a narcissist suddenly shows up again after months or even years, or why they seem strangely restless once you move on, the reason is not as simple as missing you. It goes deeper. It is about losing access to something they felt was still theirs. Keep listening because the final idea explains why many people keep feeding the connection even after they have already cut contact. That is where many people get stuck. They think silence alone ends everything. Sometimes it does not. Sometimes silence is only step one. The real shift, the life-changing shift, comes later. It comes when your mind stops circling them, when your emotions stop answering to them, and when your future no longer bends around what they think, say, or do. That is when the balance truly changes. That is when the script breaks, and that is when the person who once depended on your emotional reactions starts to feel the ground disappear under them. A narcissist can often handle silence better than you think. Silence still leaves room for fantasy. It leaves room for them to imagine you are still thinking about them, checking on them, waiting for them, secretly hoping they return. As long as they can believe they still live inside your emotional world, they can keep the illusion alive. They can tell themselves their influence is still there, even if they no longer hear from you. But the deeper wound comes when that illusion is gone for real. When you truly stop organizing your feelings around them, they lose something they depended on for validation. They are no longer at the center of your choices, no longer behind your fear, no longer connected to your hope, no longer sitting in your mind every morning and every night. Your peace is no longer shaken by what they do. Your happiness is no longer tied to whether they approve of you. Your self-worth no longer rises and falls with their attention. That emotional change is hard for someone who built power through psychological control. It tells them the hold they thought would last forever is gone. This is why healing is much more than blocking a number or refusing a conversation. Real freedom begins when you stop measuring yourself through their eyes. It begins when you stop building your future around what happened in that relationship. The most powerful moment is not the silence between you. It is the moment your inner world no longer belongs to them. Stay with that, because this is where everything changes. Once that happens, the old tricks start failing, and the person who once felt larger than life becomes someone who can no longer reach the part of you they used to control. Many people think strong emotional reactions will finally make a narcissist understand the pain they caused. They believe anger will wake them up. They believe confrontation will force honesty. They believe one more message, one more explanation, one more emotional truth will finally make everything clear. But in many cases, those reactions keep the bond alive. Whether the feeling is love, rage, sadness, guilt, or deep frustration, the important part is this: your attention is still locked on them. They are still shaping your emotional state. They are still taking up space in your mind. And that continued emotional investment can feed their sense of importance. This is why true indifference is so powerful. Indifference does not mean you pretend nothing happened. It does not mean you bury your pain and act numb. It means you reach a place where their choices no longer control your mood, your confidence, or your peace. You stop feeling pushed to explain yourself. You stop rushing to defend your decisions. You stop trying to prove your value to someone who kept refusing to see it. Their criticism stops defining you. Their praise stops feeling necessary. Instead of reacting on impulse, you answer with thought, or you do not answer at all, because there is simply nothing left to prove. For someone who expected every interaction to create an emotional response, that change can be deeply disturbing. Manipulation only works when reactions are predictable. When those reactions fade, the old hooks stop catching, the arguments get shorter, the emotional pull weakens, your energy starts moving back to your own life, your own goals, your own healing. And that quiet detachment says something powerful without saying a word. It says your life is no longer built around someone else's need for control. Another reason emotional independence can shake a narcissist more than simple no contact is because it removes their power over the story. In these relationships, managing appearances often matters just as much as managing people. They want to shape how others see them. They may cast themselves as the victim, the hero, the misunderstood partner, the person who tried so hard. At the same time, they minimize the harm they caused or deny it completely. If they can control the story, they can protect the image they spent so much time building, and they can avoid facing the uncomfortable truth of their own behavior. When you are still emotionally trapped, you may spend endless time defending yourself, explaining what really happened, replaying events, trying to correct every lie, trying to make people understand your side. But here's the irony. Even that can keep you tied to their version of reality because your energy is still focused on answering them. Then healing starts and something very important changes. You no longer feel the need to fight every false accusation. You no longer feel pulled to correct every twisted version of the past. You become more interested in living your life than winning a debate. That shift takes away a major source of their power. They can keep telling their story, but it no longer shapes how you see yourself. Your identity becomes rooted in your values, not their opinions. They lose the satisfaction of watching you chase validation. They lose the thrill of seeing you react to every distortion. And over time, your calm, steady life speaks louder than endless words ever could. People who truly know you begin to see through actions, not drama. The biggest disruption is not that you expose them. It is that you stopped allowing their version of events to define your reality. That silence is not weakness. It is strength with nothing left to prove. One of the hardest things for a narcissist to witness is not your sadness after the relationship ends. It is your real growth without them. During the relationship, they may have slowly trained you to believe that you needed them to succeed, to feel lovable, to feel secure, to trust yourself. They may have done it through subtle criticism, through constant comparison, through mixed signals, through affection that came and went without warning. Over time, that creates a painful atmosphere where your self-worth starts leaning on their approval. You begin doubting your own instincts. You begin questioning your value. You begin thinking that peace, love, and confidence only exist if they are beside you. Then healing begins, and that belief starts to crack. You make choices without checking what they would think. You reconnect with people you drifted away from. You return to interests that were neglected. You focus on your work, your home, your health, your future. You start enjoying quiet moments that once felt impossible. Slowly, your confidence returns, but now it is built on something stronger. It is built on your own judgment, your own values, your own lived experience. And that changes everything. For a narcissist, this can be deeply unsettling because your progress destroys the story they wanted you to believe. If they imagined you would always remain emotionally tied to them, your growth becomes a reality they cannot easily explain away. It challenges the image they had of themselves as essential, irreplaceable, uniquely important. The more grounded you become, the less believable that image becomes. So if this is opening your eyes in a new way, stay with me because the next part explains why even anger can still keep the old system alive long after the relationship has ended. One of the most misunderstood parts of narcissistic behavior is emotional supply. Many people think it only means praise, admiration, compliments, or constant attention. But it is much wider than that. Any strong emotional reaction can serve the same purpose. Love can do it, anger can do it, fear can do it. Guilt, jealousy, desperation, tears, repeated explanations, all of it can work. Why? Because the exact emotion matters less than the proof behind it. The proof is that they can still affect you, that they can still enter your emotional world and create movement. This is why some narcissists seem just as satisfied after starting an argument as they do after receiving affection. In both situations, they are receiving evidence that they still matter enough to disturb your peace. That is the real payoff. The reaction itself becomes the confirmation. But once you move from reaction into true neutrality, the supply begins to disappear. Their words no longer pull defensive speeches out of you. Their silence no longer causes panic. Their presence no longer fills the room with emotional pressure. That is the moment the entire dynamic starts to break. You have not just become quiet, you have removed their access to your mind and heart. You have taken back the inner territory they relied on for so long. If they can trigger you, they feel connected. If they can predict your response, they feel powerful. But when your emotional energy returns to your own life, that source dries up. This is not about punishing them. It is not a game. It is the natural result of real recovery. Your peace becomes more valuable than the reaction they are trying to provoke. And when peace becomes the priority, their old methods begin to fall flat in ways they cannot control. Another major source of power in a narcissistic relationship is predictability. Over time, they learn your emotional patterns, sometimes so quietly that you do not even notice it happening. They learn what makes you feel guilty. They learn what sparks your anxiety. They learn which words make you rush to defend yourself. They learn what pulls you back in, what weakens your boundaries, what opens the door again. Once they know that map, manipulation becomes easier. They do not need new tactics when the old ones still work. This is why healing changes the whole structure. As you recover, you stop reacting automatically. You begin seeing the pattern before stepping into it. A message that once would have thrown you into panic becomes something you can read with distance. A guilt-filled comment no longer forces you into a long explanation. A jealousy move no longer drags you into competition. An insult no longer decides your mood for the day. Instead of reacting from old pain, you pause. You think. You choose what protects your peace. That kind of change is deeply frustrating to someone who built influence on predictable reactions. Their usual methods stop working. The silent treatment no longer sends you chasing. Sudden compliments no longer erase a long history of harm. Last-minute apologies no longer guarantee another chance. The emotional buttons they once pressed so easily start disappearing. And here is what matters. Your unpredictability is not manipulation. It is not a tactic. It is what naturally happens when you become emotionally grounded. You stop living as a reaction to them. You begin living from your own values. And once they can no longer guess how you will respond, they lose one of the most effective tools they use to keep you stuck. The script no longer runs the same way. The scene changes, and they can feel it. For many narcissists, one of the hardest realities to face is watching someone create a meaningful life without them. During the relationship, they may have pushed the idea that you would never be as happy, as stable, or as loved if they were no longer in your life. Sometimes they say it directly. Sometimes they say it in softer ways, through criticism, through doubt, through making you feel like they are the reason you feel confident at all. Over time, this can create the false belief that your future depends on their presence. Then something shifts. You start building a life that does not revolve around proving anything to them. You form healthier connections. You make progress toward personal goals. You rediscover parts of yourself that had been pushed aside. You begin experiencing calm in places where there used to be constant tension. And little by little, your happiness stops depending on whether they notice you, approve of you, or miss you. It begins growing from your own choices, your own habits, your own daily life. That quiet transformation says more than any final speech ever could. For a narcissist, it can feel like a direct rejection of the role they believe they held in your story. If they saw themselves as irreplaceable, your peace challenges that belief. If they saw themselves as essential, your growth proves otherwise. Your healing becomes living evidence that their influence had limits. And that can be very hard for someone whose self-image depends on feeling exceptional or indispensable. But your success is not about defeating them. It is about reclaiming yourself. It is about recovering the pieces that were covered by fear, confusion, and emotional exhaustion. And when those pieces come back, your future stops being a reaction to the past. It starts becoming your own. Many people believe freedom begins the moment they block the phone number, delete the old messages, or walk away for good. Those steps matter. Sometimes they are absolutely necessary. They can create safety. They can create breathing room. They can stop the immediate chaos, but they are only the beginning. Physical distance creates protection, while psychological freedom creates lasting peace. It is possible to have no contact with someone and still carry them in your mind every single day. You replay conversations. You imagine what you should have said. You wonder whether they changed. You hope they finally see your value. You picture them regretting everything. And even though they are physically gone, they are still taking up emotional space. That is why true freedom is deeper. It arrives when your inner world no longer circles around them. You stop measuring your healing by whether they miss you. You stop tracking your value through whether they come back. You stop waking up wondering what they think. Your attention slowly returns to your own life, your body, your work, your relationships, your future. The energy once drained by confusion and emotional fatigue becomes available again. And that energy starts building something better, something real, something yours. This shift matters because it cannot be controlled from the outside. They may try to reconnect, they may try to provoke you, they may try to remind you of the past, but when they no longer control your emotional attention, those moves lose force. That is the real turning point. That is when the relationship finally loses its grip. Not when they are blocked, but when they are no longer living rent-free inside your mind. That is the moment your life stops being about surviving them and starts being about fully living again. A lot of survivors make one quiet mistake without meaning to. They go no contact on the outside, but inside, they are still waiting for a reaction. They still want the apology, they still want the confession, they still want the moment when the narcissist finally admits the truth, admits the damage, admits what was lost. That wish is deeply human, it makes sense, but it can also keep the emotional tie alive far longer than expected. Because as long as your peace depends on what they realize, say, or feel, some part of your life is still revolving around them. That is why the deepest freedom is not found in their regret. It is found in your release. It is found in reaching the point where their understanding is no longer required for your healing. You do not need them to validate your pain for your pain to be real. You do not need them to tell the truth for the truth to exist. You do not need them to come back changed for you to move forward whole. That is the level many people miss at first. They think distance is the finish line, when in reality it is often just the doorway. The full healing happens when your nervous system settles, when your mind stops scanning for them, when your self-worth is no longer up for debate, and when the old emotional hunger for closure begins to fade. If you have made it this far, really stay with this part, because this is where many people unknowingly keep feeding the bond. Not through contact, but through obsession. Not through conversation, but through emotional waiting. And the moment you stop waiting for them to give you the ending you deserved, you begin giving yourself something far greater. You give yourself your life back. When that shift happens, your reactions start changing in small but powerful ways. You no longer feel pulled to answer every message in your head. You no longer spend hours rehearsing imaginary conversations. You no longer need to monitor their life, their mood, their relationships, or their image to feel okay. The silence becomes clean instead of tense. Your day becomes yours again. The old emotional alarms stop firing every time a memory appears. You may still remember. You may still feel waves now and then. Healing is not perfect, but the center of gravity changes. Their behavior stops being the event your whole emotional system responds to. And that is deeply unsettling for someone who depended on having a permanent seat inside your mind. Remember, a narcissist often does not just want contact. They want influence. They want to feel that they can still shift your emotions, still direct your focus, still leave a mark the moment they decide to reappear. When that power is gone, when your attention no longer jumps, when your peace no longer cracks, when your future no longer pauses for them, they are left without the leverage they once trusted. This is why emotional freedom matters so much more than dramatic endings. You do not have to prove anything. You do not have to make them jealous. You do not have to show them what they lost. Real power is quieter than that. It is waking up and realizing your mind is no longer waiting for them. It is noticing that your joy is returning in ordinary moments. It is feeling your life grow larger, while their role in it grows smaller. That is not performance. That is recovery. And once recovery reaches that level, the old cycle has far less room to survive. So the greatest victory after a narcissistic relationship is not making them suffer. It is not winning the final argument. It is not waiting for the day they finally understand your value. The real victory is reaching a place where their opinion no longer decides your peace, their behavior no longer controls your emotions, and their presence or absence no longer shapes your future. No contact can give you needed distance. It can protect you. It can create the space where healing begins. But the deeper healing starts When your mind, your heart, and your identity are no longer tied to them, that is when the cycle truly ends. That is when the past stops writing your present. That is when the person who once had so much access can no longer reach the part of you they used to move so easily. If you are on this journey, remember this: every step toward emotional freedom is a step away from manipulation and a step back toward yourself. Even the small steps count. The quiet ones count. The days when you choose peace over reaction count. The moments when you stop checking, stop explaining, stop chasing answers, those count too. Keep going. Because healing is not measured by how deeply they hurt. It is measured by how completely you reclaim your own life. And that is the part no one can take from you. Once you build a life that is no longer organized around surviving their behavior, something beautiful happens. You stop trying to escape the story and start outgrowing it. And when that happens, the connection does not just weaken, it loses the power to define you at all.